Did you know you can deploy Azure Local, which is Microsoft Azure, running on-prem inside your Hyper-V VM? If not, stick around because today's video I'm going to show you how. The best thing is completely free. So you can essentially run a Azure data center on your local machine at zero cost. We can play with Azure Stack HCI, we can deploy Azure Virtual Desktop, we can deploy clusters at zero cost. The only thing it needs is time and effort. So that's what I'm going to do today. In today's video, I'm going to show you from scratch how to deploy everything. We're going to set up the Hyper-V VM, we're going to deploy Azure Local, we're going to checking, and then we're just going to give it a bit of a kick the tires with it. So if you're interested, stick around because it's going to be awesome. First of all, let's think about what Azure Local is. Azure Local is essentially on-prem Azure. It's like a very cut down version of Azure. So it's meant for those workloads who want to run resources but don't want to run them in the cloud. They need them on-prem, whether that can be application latency, cost, or they prefer to keep stuff on-prem for security reasons. Historically, Azure Local, or Azure Stack HCI as it used to be called, has needed quite beefy resources. So I remember when it first was released, you had to have like 3 nodes in the cluster and you had to run it on validated hardware. So entry point was tens of thousands of dollars potentially, whereas they then cut it down to 2 nodes to make it lighter, so that made it more accessible, but I still didn't have 2 machines to run it, and if you wanted to run it in Azure, you'd have to have a very expensive VM. But they recently changed that down to 1 node, right? What that means, now you can run it inside a virtual machine. I run it locally on my machine. My machine's got 64 gigs of RAM. Okay, I'm able to allocate the minimum spec, which is 32 gigs and 4 cores, to that virtual machine, and that's how we can run Azure Local. So what we're going to do in today's video, we're basically going to show you a script which I use to deploy this, because you get 60 days for free. So I can just delete the VM and kick the installation off maybe in 2 months time, then I continue to use it for free. So I can spin up resources without needing to pay for them. I'm not having to pay for anything local. Really good way to test stuff. It's going to take a lot of time. It literally took me all day yesterday to figure out how to do this. I'm sharing what took me about 12 hours worth of work just to get this to work. Deployment time took a long time as well. So stick around, let's get to it. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to follow a blog which John Kelby wrote. This blog shows us how to deploy the Hyper-V VM and install Azure HCI or Azure Local via PowerShell scripts. Right, so let me just show you what that blog looks like. So this is going to be the basis of the deployment. We can basically see here they're using Hyper-V, and then we just got some PowerShell scripts in there as well. You can see here all the scripts that we're going to be using. You do need quite a beefy VM for this, so I've got 64 gigs of RAM in my machine. I'll be creating a Hyper-V VM with 32 gigs of RAM. We're basically going to just go through these scripts. I've basically modified the script slightly so we can run stuff remotely without having to log on to the host as well. I'll take you through that as well. This is the script, and then we've got a PowerShell script which we're going to go through and run. Alright, let's get to it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the Hyper-V VM, right? We've got EVMs, so that's my drive that I'm using. So if we open up Hyper-V Manager, we'll see one that I was testing earlier. So I'm just going to delete that. So delete. Okay. And then I'm just going to go into that directory and then just make sure it's gone. So if I go to EVMs, Azure Local, this is just some stuff I was doing previously. I'll just wait for that to delete. Alright, so I'm just going to delete those files. So delete these. So these are the old ones. Okay, alright. So what we've got here, we've got a domain controller, which I've deployed, and some Windows test machines. What we'll see here is the Hyper-V VM being created. So I'm just going to run this code here. Okay, so let's create a VM. So now we go over to the Hyper-V console, which is that VM, which is Azure Local. Next we need to do is just to modify the boot order. So we're just going to boot from network adapter last and hard drive first. Click apply to that. Next we need to add the NICs. So you can see here the basic configuration is after a certain number of network cards. So we're going to create 4 NICs, right? So I'm just going to run this code here, and then we're also going to create the disks, right? So again, we need to have a very specific disk configuration. So it's going to be 6 disks of 1 terabyte each. If you're going to fill it up, it potentially could take up 6 terabytes, but we're only just going to create 1 or 2 VMs as a test. It shouldn't be anywhere near that. So I'm just going to run that now. It's going to create those disks. Now if we go to the VM settings, we can see those disks there, and we've got the NICs in place as well. Alright, so let's do some other stuff. So we need to create a new Guardian, a key protector, enable VTPM, and disable VM integration services. Now we need to expose the virtualization extensions, so that will allow the nesting essentially. We're also going to set the VM processor to 8 processors. We're going to trick it into thinking we are going to give it 8 processors, but this is like the minimum requirements that we're going to need to get this up and running. So I'm just going to run that. Alright, so now we go back to our virtual machine again, just to double check. You can see here we have the processors. Okay. Now we need to turn on the virtual machine. We need to get a MAC address. So we're going to rearrange the NICs in a certain way that it'll work correctly. So I'm just going to fire up this machine. We've got no operating system. Nothing will happen. It'll run for 30 seconds or so. Then we'll shut it down and run the script once it's got its MAC addresses. You can see here we don't have anything installed. So it's just a blank VM. Okay, that's now done that successfully. So we've basically got these NICs here now. So they're called NIC 1, 2, 3 and 4. If we go back to the console, look at the properties, settings, we can see we've got NIC 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now we can go ahead and install the Stack HCI or Azure Local operating system. So basically I need to connect the disk because we've downloaded it. To download it, you log into the Azure portal. Let me show you how to do that now. Once we're in the portal, if we just do a search for Azure Local. Okay, so what you now do is you can either explore order hardware, which we don't want to do, or we can download software, which is what we want to do. So just click download software, and then we want 23H2 English. Click on that, and then just click on download software, and that will kick off the download. That'll download that software for you. So that's how we get hold of the media. What I'm going to do now is connect the disk. So we go to File, Browse. I'm going to use this one. I tried the very latest one, but I had a problem with it because it was expecting a version of .NET to be there, but I couldn't install the .NET version. So I've reverted back to a previous one. So that's just FYI, if you get any problems, use the version which I'm just highlighting here. Okay, so I'm just going to click that apply button, click on OK, and then we should be able to connect to the VM and start that and be really quick. And just about to go, yeah, got it. Sometimes you miss it, you get like a second or two to do it. Okay, we're going to go through Windows Setup. Okay, so I'm going to select my English United Kingdom, keyboard input United Kingdom, language install, click next. It says Azure HCI operating system. It's like a really cut down version of Windows. Essentially what Azure runs on, right? If you go to an Azure data center or a Microsoft data center, they'll have their own little version of Windows. It's different from a server operating system, and that's why we have to download a specific version for it. Alright, so click next, go to custom. The 512 disk is the one that we're going to install the operating system on, so click next. Okay, so that's now going to go ahead and install the Azure Stack HCI. Come back shortly and we'll see it deployed. Okay, so that's now installed. So now we just need to set a password. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a password. We are now installed. We'll get to the menu screen. And there you go. So if you want to know where sconfig is how you manage anything which doesn't have a full desktop operating system. So this is like the cut down version of Windows. Alright, so what we're going to do now is continue the configuration. So we just go back to our PowerShell script. So we're going to get credential and then configure the NICs. So just going to go down to here. We're going to rename them and set the DHCP to disabled. We are going to give one of them a static IP address. I'm just going to click here. That's going to run selection. It's going to pop up and ask me for the credentials for that administrator account that we just configured. Make sure you can remember what the password was. So I'm just going to run that. So if that's correct, we should start to do stuff. Alright, so that's done stuff now. So we can see here it's configured the NIC successfully. So let's double check that on the actual VM itself. I'm just going to go to network settings. There you go. You can see here that it has configured that IP address successfully. Alright, so what we're going to do now is install these, the Hyper-V feature. We're going to install the Azure Arc installer, PowerShell module. We're going to install the AZ accounts, AZ connected machine, which is for Azure Arc, and then AZ resources. Alright, let's run these. Run selection. Well, that's now completed successfully. Now we actually want to run this invoke Azure Stack HCI Arc initialization, right? And what essentially that's going to do, that's going to connect our VM to Azure Arc. Okay, so we're going to copy the scripts and run this on the actual host itself. Get to CLS, paste that. It's asking me to authenticate, which we're going to do now. So that's now authenticated. Close that down. Now it's doing something called Bootstrap. Bootstrap is where it's going to basically check the configuration and make sure that we're good to go from a network card perspective, from an OS perspective, from a disk perspective. So it's basically checking to make sure that we are eligible to install HCI. Fingers crossed it'll go through and let us install it. This process takes around 10-15 minutes. Once it's done, we should see our machine pop up within the Azure Arc console within Azure. Right, so we'll be back shortly. Alright, that's completed. If we look at the thing now here, we can say it's succeeded, status. Okay, so now if we head over to our Azure console, what you should see if you go to the Azure Arc machines, you'll see this machine here. So that's the one I was using for testing. We can see here it says Arc enabled, the resource group. So click on that machine. That's our machine running on Hyper-V, right? So that is the actual machine itself. Quite cool. Now that is run, we need to basically go away and check our Active Directory, right? So there's a couple of prereqs that we need to do for Active Directory. So I'm just going to go to my Hyper-V VM and show you what they are. First of all, we've got a domain controller running. I'm just going to log in there. There's a couple of things that I had to do here. So the first thing is, let's open up the group policy console. We created an OU called Azure Local. I created this account here called HCI admin. The second thing I had to do was to basically create a OU and disable group policy inheritance. I don't know why, but it wouldn't let me continue installation until I disable group policy inheritance. And that's what we've done there. I put block inheritance on there. We also need to create another account on the actual post itself. So I'm just going to go into this config. And I'm going to add a local administrator. The user, I'm going to call this Arc admin. Again, I'm going to make sure the password meets complexity requirements. So that's created the local user on the HCI host as Arc admin, and it's added it to local admins group. Okay. So that's what we're going to be using for our passwords, and this will come into, you'll see the reason why I'm doing that in a second. Okay, alright, so now we should be in a place where we can actually do the full deployment. What I'm going to do is we go to home, we go to Azure Local, and we're going to go and deploy Azure Local. We've got everything prepped, and we've got our HCI host, we've got our Active Directory environment, we've got our admin accounts, and we've disabled the GPOs. So now let's go and do this. Alright, I'm going to go and create instance. We are going to select my Azure subscription. We're going to select our Arc enabled resource group. And we're going to select West Europe. So the reason why I said West Europe, it has to be in West Europe, because these lists here are the only ones that you can actually create the Arc resources in. Right? If you create them in any other resource group, you won't be able to find your VM, because these are the only ones which he's looking at. Okay. Alright, so we're going to call this. So we're going to call this YouTube test. Instance name, resource group, select machines to use and validate. So this is where we're going to select our HCI host. We're just going to click add machine, and we can see this has popped up. If you weren't using the correct resource group or in the correct region, then you won't see this here, right? So we can see this here. This is our session host, and it's in the ready status. So we're going to select add. Okay, so we've added that. We're going to create a new key vault as well. Create a new key vault. We're going to call this YouTube test. I'm going to click create. Okay, now we need to validate this selected machine. So I'm going to validate that space. You're just going to run some checks against the machine. Okay, so now we're able to proceed, right? I'm going to select next. We're going to do a new configuration. I'm going to group all the traffic into one. If you had different network cards installed on your VM, you could then select which ones you want to group for management traffic, which one for compute, which one's for storage, etc. But because we're only using one single VM, we're just like one NIC essentially. We're just going to group everything into that one single NIC. We're going to select the network card here that we're going to use. So it's going to be used for compute, management, and storage. So we don't really need any of the other NICs. We're going to do manual IP addresses. So this will be the IP addresses of the resources which you use for the management network, essentially. So 168.1. I'm going to do 223. 192.168.1.228. Subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. Default gateway 192.168.1.1. Obviously these settings will be different in your environment, and this is what I've got set up. And then the DNS server is going to be the IP address of the domain controller. 192.168.1.210. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to validate that just to make sure we're good. Okay, so networking, so we're using the same NIC for all the storage management traffic, and that's going to be that first NIC. We set this to manual, and then that's the IP address range for the blocks next management. So we don't need to set anything here. Yeah, we do. Custom location name, so YouTube test, specify active directory details. So this is why I grabbed the OU name. Right, my name is virtualmank.local. Okay, and the OU that we are going to be using is this here. So OU Azure Local username HCI admin, and the password is, I set that to previously. Okay, and the local administrator is a local administrator account on the HCI host. So that's going to be this one here. So this is Arc admin. Arc admin, and again, we're going to put the password in. Alright, so they're the accounts that we're going to be using to connect to all the resources. So next, security, we're just going to leave this at recommended settings, which is good. So it's going to do like BitLocker for volumes, signing SMB and so on. Yeah, in fact, to make it go quicker, I'm actually going to turn a lot of this stuff off. Obviously, in production environment, I wouldn't recommend this. This is my dev test environment, so I want to make it as quick as easy as possible. Alright, so next we're going to click advanced. They create workloads and volumes. So this is selecting around all the storage account stuff. This is like having a mini Azure data center. We don't need any tags here. Now we're going to run through some validation checks to make sure we've got all the permissions that we need, make sure we've got the resources that we need, and then once it's done that validation check, we'll be able to go through and actually do the deployment. Okay, so that's completed successfully. So you can see it's assigned permissions to the Key Vault, created some Key Vault secrets, enabled audit logging, and created a service principal as well. So yeah, done everything that it needs to do. Alright, so we've done the validation. Now, task deployment setting resources. I'm just going to start the validation. Just a little update, it's still going, been running about 5 minutes now. As you can see here, it runs a couple of checks. You can see check external connectivity requirements, which is making sure you can reach out, checking active directory preparation, so it's looking at all my active directory resources, and it basically runs a lot of these checks. Once it's completed the checks, it can then continue. So we've got an error. Okay, so sometimes you just continue and it just continues to go, but let's have a quick look and see what this error is. So view details, attempt to install missing active directory module, get Windows install module. It's basically saying it can't install the module, so I'm gonna retry it. Okay, so as you can see, not done anything, just works. So sometimes you have to keep on retrying these jobs and they'll just go through. That's now passed successfully. Click view details, and that's working. We'll be back shortly when this is fully completed. Alright, so we're back. As you can see, all these tests have passed, which is great news. We can now move on to the next, review and create. These are the tests we've done. Check for Arc integration, check the software, check the network, check the hardware, check everything, and just make sure everything's okay. So we click next, review and create. storage connectivity, single server deployment, networking pattern, hyperconverged. This is the IP addresses that we configured earlier, and the management details that we put there to connect to the Active Directory environment. Let's go do this. So this is the big button. So once we click create, that's going to kick off that deployment, and then goes on to the next bit. This is a very time consuming process. There's a lot of waiting around. It has been quite frustrating because you can wait like half an hour, 45 minutes, and then something fails, then you have to fix something, then go back again. Hopefully this is going to be a nice seamless process after we've been through and tweaked the scripts and stuff. We'll wait for this to appear. Shortly you'll see the task pop up, and then we can go there. Back shortly. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes. It's sat waiting at the screen for a while. This just popped up, so you can see here these are the steps which it basically has to go through, right? So a lot of steps here. So these are the steps which it has to go through, and you can see here that there are quite a few steps. It's going to take a while. I think it says it normally takes about 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe that's even slower because it's running on a virtual machine. We'll keep tracking it. Obviously I'm not going to sit here for an hour. You can see just a quick check to see what it's doing. So we can see it installs like OS updates, it configures settings, it joins the host to Active Directory, installs .NET, configures the storage, does encryption, sets up certificates. So there's the whole raft of stuff which it does. And I think this is probably why there's so many checks, right? Each one of these is obviously going to have their own kind of prereqs, so we need to make sure we've got everything in place as it should be. I'm going to let this continue. I'd expect it's going to take at least an hour. I'll see you guys shortly, and hopefully we're going to have lots of green ticks. Just a quick update. So we're 35 minutes in. You can see here it's been through, I don't know, quarter of the steps. So we've validated the environment, it's installed the OpenSSH client, it's installed some OS updates, cleaned up, it's validated network settings, and now it's just doing some configuration settings. Alright, so yeah, I'll be back shortly with another update. Just a quick update. We are now 1 hour 20 minutes in. We're still going through the deployment. I'll show you what's happening on the back end on the actual VM itself. If you look here on the disks, you can see that it's created these snapshots essentially. Obviously these are the disks which are in use that it's writing all the information to, so we can see there as the installation goes on. That's generally what's happening under the hood. And then if we go into YouTube tests, we'll be able to see this deployment happening. If I go to the overview, which now saying your system is validated and has currently been deployed. See details, click more. Yeah, so Azure connection, deployment in progress, connected like 26 minutes ago. Still a while to go, I think. Just thought I'd give you a quick update. I'll sit here, keep an eye on this, and then, I don't know, maybe the next half an hour it'll be done. And then hopefully we'll have a mini Azure data center running inside my house. Alright, see you guys shortly. 7 ticks away from being complete. It kicked off at 11:35, it's now 13:12, so yeah, it's taken nearly 2 hours to get to this stage. It's not fast. Obviously, this is just a normal SSD, so give it a faster disk. It may go a bit faster, but you can see here it's done the domain join, set up some certificates, it's created a cluster, it's applied security policies, it's set up trusted launch, which it's doing at the moment. These jobs that it's got to do, they seem quite small. Hopefully, it will get finished quickly. All right, not long to go. I'll give you an update when it's finished. Alright, it looks like we are finally done. So you can see here it kicked off at 11:35 and it's finished at 1:19 PM. So just a little under 2 hours to finish that deployment. If we look at our disks, we can see obviously we've got our disks here that have been written to. Let me just see the size of the VM. So it's got about just over 106 gig. Okay. Alright, so let's look in the Azure portal. If we go into the overview, see it has the HCI, so let's have a quick look. It's just named YouTube test, like we can see, and it's connected. Everything looking good, and the good thing is you can see I've got 60 days remaining on the free trial, so I'm not gonna have to pay for anything. It's quite good if I can like test out the AVD stuff, and it just means that I can have a play around with this and get to know Azure Local a bit more, because it's not something I've played about with that much. So if I now go to Azure Local, alright, let's have a quick look at the overview. We can see systems connected, one or two. One of them was the old one. It's telling me I've got an update available as well. Let's have a quick look at that. So current version, cool. All right, yeah, look, that's pretty much it. Has now been deployed. So essentially what it means is that when I wanted to create like Azure Virtual Desktop VMs, I can create them locally on this Azure Local. That'll be a topic for the next video. What we're going to do then is actually probably going to connect this up to Nerdio and deploy some VMs and then test it, just seeing what the experience is like. We are now done. So that's connected. It's got 4 cores, 32 gigs in memory. It's running the Azure Stack HCI operating system. This is essentially a mini data center inside my Hyper-V environment. Resource wise, it's taking up quite a lot of disk. This is the disk assigned to it. Also memory as well. So in my machine I've got like 64 gigs of RAM. We've not got much left there. We've only got, I don't know, 10 gigs left. So probably just be able to create 1 or 2 VMs to test this and see what that's like. Yeah, quite a interesting experience. It's taken about 3 hours in total to configure and deploy this. So if I want to every 2 months rebuild it so I don't get charged for it, that's perfectly fine. Most of it's just sat there waiting, and it's automated as well. The key things for me were the preparation. I spent the whole of yesterday trying to get this to work and hit problem after problem, and it's basically because I've not done the prep. Most of it was on the Active Directory prereqs that we put in, and just getting the machine configuration right, making sure all the scripts are completed, making sure we're using the right ISO, little things like that. I hope you've found this video useful. Hopefully now you've got enough knowledge to go ahead and deploy your own little Azure Stack or Azure Local data center inside your own house. So you could also do this on the physical machine as well. I've done it on the virtual machine. I don't have access to any other physical machines. If you had a piece of hardware knocking around that had 64 gigs of RAM and 4 processors, then you may be able to get away with using that just as a sort of test environment. But obviously that means if it's a physical machine you need to rebuild it 2 months, otherwise you're going to start getting charged for that as well. Yeah, alright, so the next video that we're going to do is we'll actually connect this Azure Local instance up to Nerdio, and then we'll spin up some VMs and see what the performance is like. This may be a cheaper way for me to start testing stuff, right? Because I don't need to pay for the Azure resources because I'm running everything locally, and I get to learn about Azure Local a bit more. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. I'll see you next week for the VM deployment. Alright, bye.